The 2024 Olympians dressed to impress and not. President Emmanuel Macron takes advantage of the Olympic break to figure out who is going to run the country. And the JD Vance School of winning friends and influencing people. I'm Andrew Muller. The Monocle Daily starts now. Welcome to the Daily Live from Paris. I'm Andrew Muller. It's day 3, I think now, of our weekday residency here on the 16th floor of the So Hotel in the centre of the French capital. Taken over for the next couple of weeks by Maison Allianz, the worldwide insurance partner of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. My guests Thomas Chatterton-Williams and Marc Beaugé will discuss the day's big stories. We'll also take a look at design in Paris with Janaïna Milheiro and get the latest from the Games with our roaming reporter Kieran Pender. That's all coming up on the Monocle Daily, live from Maison Allianz at the So Hotel. And welcome to the Monocle Daily, live from Paris. And no saying that still hasn't got old. With me, Andrew Muller. I am joined today by Thomas Chatterton-Williams, staff writer at The Atlantic, a visiting professor of humanities at Bard College and a non-resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and the author of Self-Portrait in Black and White. We're also joined by Marc Beaugé, fashion columnist for Quotidian. Hello to you both.
Hello.
What a pleasure to be here.
Well, don't oversell it. But as we have you both here, I thought it would be fun to ask, to try and do justice to the view we have, which is remarkable. Can either of you actually see your house from up here?
I think so. I can see the building.
I can see the route I traced, that carved through these streets walking here, actually. It's incredible.
It's impressive, yeah.
I do wish we could do it more justice in this strictly audio medium, but I do encourage our listeners to look up posters that our gloating team may have posted on their various social media accounts. I wanted to ask you both, though, before we start discussing the great issues of the day, just to introduce yourself to the Daily's listeners. Marc, we'll start with you.
What do I do? My job?
Basically that.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Marc. I'm a journalist. I have been writing for 20 years. I run magazines, L'Etiquette magazines, and I have a column in M. Le Monde about how people dress and what it means, and also on TV on Quotidien. And I'm very happy to be here.
And Thomas, what about you?
I'm in a long tradition of Americans who ended up expatriating to Paris and trying to be writers. I've been here for a while. In fact, this is a nice little coincidence. When I first moved to Paris, I started working for a new magazine called Holiday that Marc launched.
Yeah.
So I go way back with Marc.
Exactly.
I mean, those are obviously some big steps you are trying to follow in, setting yourself up as the American author in Paris. I mean, do you sort of wake screaming in the night dreaming of Ernest Hemingway? Or
He's doing well.
Well, I dream of the exchange rate that he enjoyed when he was out here in the 1920s. I certainly don't like the way the euro stacks up against the dollar now.
Well, we will be starting, predictably yet reasonably, with the Olympic Games. We will be discussing the Games themselves later in the show, but right now we're going to discuss what people are wearing while they compete in them. We are a few days in from the river-borne fashion parade of the opening ceremony, and at which Mongolia was generally reckoned to have won an honorary gold. But who is cutting a dash, possibly in this respect, if no other, on the track? Marc, it seems obvious to start with you on this. Fashion is what you do. When you look at what people are wearing while they are running, jumping, throwing things, etc., who is looking good doing it?
Well, I had to write it down, so I have a list of what I like and what I didn't like. Now, obviously, the best outfits come from the traditional sports, fencing, horse riding. You can see the tradition through the clothes. You know, the fencing sports, women and men, they wear white because wearing white, you could see where the weapon touched the body. It was easier for the referees at the time. That's why they are still wearing white. Of course, the riders are very chic. They have a short jacket that is specifically made to be worn when riding an horse. So obviously, zoo sports provide the best looks. But what did I write? I wrote a few. I love the Ralph Lauren outfits for the US team during the ceremony. I love the King of Spain, always very perfect. I loved South Sudan. They were wearing black suits. Were very interesting. I loved Zidane. Well, I like Zidane. He was better than usual because he's very, very badly dressed usually. He was decent. What I don't like the volunteers.
You don't like the volunteers?
I do like the people. I mean,
no, they're doing a fine job.
They're doing great, and thanks a lot to them for being there and taking care of us. But I don't like I don't like the outfit they provided them with. I mean, it's all green and slightly doubtful. No, I don't like it at all. I think when people come to you and say, "I will be working for you for free for 2 or 3 weeks," you need to provide them with something decent. And I don't like it.
Do you have a general animus against the color green, or do you just not like what they've done with it?
Specifically this ponton of green that I don't like. Usually I do like green, it's fine, but this one, it's a very modern green that I don't really appreciate. I didn't really fancy the catwalk show during the ceremony. I think it was too much of the same thing. I would have liked it to be mixed with some more classical elegance, and I think the difference, the balance would have been better in the end. I was also surprised by the fact that Lady Gaga was wearing Dior while she was playing the role of Zizi Jeanmaire, which is a French legend, known for wearing strictly only Saint Laurent on stage his whole life. I thought, but this is probably something that is linked to the LVMH, involvement in the competition. So it's probably way bigger than me and than anything, linked to historical reality. But I would have thought, she could have been wearing Saint Laurent. Everybody would have been fine.
Thomas, what about you? Has anybody struck you as looking particularly svelte?
I just think the French, have an international advantage here. You've got
Yes.
Berluti designing stuff, but also you have what I love about what France has done hosting. You have like a guy from my neighborhood in the 9th arrondissement, Stéphane Ashpool from Pigalle, who's designed all of these gradient-colored, tricolor uniforms that look really cool, really fresh and modern. So I think you just have to give it up to the host country here. France just it excels.
Thanks, Thomas.
It really does. It excels in this area.
We can tell who's hoping to get their visa renewed.
I'm actually in the process.
But Thomas, is there, do you think, different pressures now on people designing, I guess, anything that represents a nation abroad, and especially if it involves any version of the national colours or the national flag? Because we can debate the extent to which you should pay attention to any of these people, but there's always going to be people who get angry about it, that they think it's been sacrilegious or disrespectful or insufficiently that or too much the other thing.
I 100% agree, which is why I think you can't actually ever, cater to those kind of naysayers. I love what France has done about, embracing tradition, but also modernizing it at the same time. I think that's one of France's greatest strengths, actually. I wonder if you agree with me on that, Marc.
Yeah. I think you're talking about the outfits specifically,
just
the whole thing. Yeah,
the whole thing, mixing the backdrop of Versailles.
Yeah, I think the target on what the Olympics is trying to achieve. This edition is trying to show Paris as both as a past cultural historical city and a current city, because French writers and French thinkers have been telling that Paris is going to be a museum for the world. And so do we want to be that, to become that and only that, or do we want to be more of a startup city like Macron maybe dreams of? I think that balance is the thing we are trying to find, and maybe this edition of the Olympics is a laboratory for that. Where is Paris? Is it a city of the past, a very beautiful one, or is it an active, very modern city? And maybe you see that in the outfits, you see that in the ceremony, you see that in the way the sports events are organized within the city and all around the old museums. It's an interesting, task and target for Paris, I think.
Well, you raise a few points there which we are going to get into with our next subject, because we will be moving away from the Games but staying in France. And not that you would necessarily know it right now from strolling the notably quiet boulevards of Paris, but somewhere politics as usual is continuing. President Emmanuel Macron bewildered many observers shortly before the Games by calling a snap parliamentary election from what appeared a position of weakness. France's voters then confounded expectations by eventually electing not the far-right majority many anticipated, but a left-leaning one. President Macron, it is being suggested, is appreciating the consumption of attention by the Olympic Games while he figures out how to unpick this. Thomas, is it possible that Macron was thinking, okay, the Games are coming up. If we do this election and it all gets a bit weird, that will actually buy me a couple of weeks?
I think he probably wasn't thinking very far ahead at all, because it could have gone very sideways. One of the concerns I was having living here was that he called this snap election. It would go to the far right, and there would be rioting that would happen as the Olympics started.
Rioting in Paris? Surely not.
Yeah, you can get a nice couple of cars burning in my neighborhood for just about any reason. Happened last year. It happens all the time, actually. So I was worried about that. He escaped. He dodged a bullet. But I don't think that you can, call a snap election, lose it, and then use the pause of attention given to the Olympics to try to usher in a new prime minister or do something, during the time that people's attention is taken away. I think he has to be very careful here.
Hey, Marc, is there any indication yet as to who that new prime minister might actually be? I mean, I guess we also have to factor in the possibility that President Macron was as surprised as anybody else by how this election turned out.
I think he probably was in the end, because obviously the first round of the snap election was won quite easily by the far right, and then the left united and eventually won by a small margin, but still won. I think a lot of people were surprised. He probably was surprised, and the fact that it's crazy, but he doesn't seem to have a plan. We are facing a man that he's still standing, he's still wearing the suit, and it still looks like a president. But is he?
I'm sorry, I'm coming from America.
He looks like a president, but does he know what he's doing? I mean, it's an insane situation to be in. So basically, we don't really know. I mean, nobody knows. Maybe he does not know that the left had finally found someone, Lucie Castes, that is. Should be, when you listen to them, the prime minister. So his name has been put forward, and Macron at the very beginning of the Olympics, the day before the ceremony, said that it's not the problem, it's not the subject. Well, it is actually, the question is who is going to be prime minister just after the Olympics. We don't know. We just don't know. The thing is, if he finally names Lucie Castes as prime minister, which seems to be the only solution right now in front of us, the only name, she's probably going to be sacked, 1 month later. But you have to go through that to finally find one day a solution. When I wrote in Le Monde yesterday that he was privately hoping for a name, someone that isn't right or left wing, someone that is a bit outside of the political classical circle, someone that would unite people and put together a government that would be a balance of a bit of everything. But nobody can find a name. I mean, it's like a scenario only in his head. Well, I can't find a name. Maybe Thomas, you could do it, but.
If I could do that, I would be in a different line.
You'd need the visa renewed first, right? But actually, we are going to come very shortly to American politics. Thomas, listeners of sensitive disposition may wish to look away now. What has been watching the last few weeks in French politics, rather, been like for you as an American? Are you the one sitting here while all this craziness unfolds going, this is nothing?
Actually, yeah. As bad as things were... it's interesting to be a resident of two countries that are really going through it right now. But, whatever France was going through was really looking from my vantage point as, if only our problems were on that scale. If you think about the past month in America, you had this catastrophic debate performance where Joe Biden, talk about just being in a suit and resembling a president. We didn't even have that. Then you have an assassination attempt of the former president, potentially future president, on live TV. And then you have Joe Biden drop out of the race last week. And after 5 days, no one even remembers the assassination attempt anymore. And then you have now, the hijacking of our attention to the point where the most important story we have going on for days on end now on social media, at least, is the idea that the vice president nominee on the Republican ticket has fornicated with a sofa.
Well, I'm glad you alluded to JD Vance, because in the United States, its election campaign is ongoing, though there is now an amount of doubtless scurrilous but undeniably amusing speculation about how much more of it will include Republican vice presidential nominee, as of this broadcast, Senator JD Vance, increasingly looking like the most ill-judged addition to the Trump camp since Eric. Senator Vance has decided, for reasons surpassing understanding, to take a stand against American women who have not, for whatever reason, had children of their own, a cohort which includes Democratic nominee Vice President Kamala Harris. Marc, we allowed the American to make fun of French politics. It seems only fair to allow the Frenchmen to make fun of the Americans. How weird does this look from your point of view?
It looks worse than France, which is saying. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, but the thing is, you can laugh about it, and we do laugh about it, but you are usually 10 years advance to us. So is it where we are going to, where we are heading to?
This is with Marine Le Pen in the role made famous by Donald Trump.
Probably. And we don't have, yet a character that looks as crazy as Donald Trump or his vice president. But I think we are going to a point where it's becoming, sure that at some point we'll go through, a period of extreme right wing at the power in France. But so I look at the U.S. and I love at the folklore, the way Trump's talk, the way his violence. But I do have in mind that we are educating and nurturing that kind of also figures in France. We have a guy that isn't exactly Donald Trump, but we have a guy called Cyril Hanouna in France. He's running a TV show, so you can make a parallel with Trump decades ago, and he uses the same ways of mocking people physics, of being violent, of humiliating the guy and the girls working with him. He has a TV show that has become a political tool for the right wing, and is that guy, that bouffon as we can call it, going to be our Trumps in 20 years? I'm not sure it won't happen. Which is
that's something
crazy
to look forward to. Thomas, Senator Vance's difficulties, are they attached to the... Well, he has obvious difficulties attached to the fact that he is JD Vance, but is his real problem right now the fact that it only made any sense putting him on the ticket when they thought they were running against Joe Biden, and now they're not?
Well, yeah, it was a real potentially life-saving own goal that the Republicans scored on themselves. It was a real arrogant and hubristic kind of move to make when you think that you don't have to capitulate in any way. You make any compromises with even the moderates or the independents of your own party. So, he should have gone with a Doug Burgum or a Marco Rubio if he was trying to convince anybody that wasn't already MAGA to come on board. But the JD Vance pick was a kind of affirmation that the party fully belongs to him now. And from what I've heard, he's already regretting the pick because Vance is embarrassing him. He doesn't like to be mocked.
Imagine being able to embarrass Donald Trump. JD Vance may have found out how to do something which has eluded the entire rest of humanity all these years. But just to follow that up, Thomas, there is a new line to take clearly for the Democrats. And I just want to know whether you think it's landing, because the stock response to Trump for the last 8 years has been to attempt to conjure fear of him, to say that he's dangerous, that he is incipient fascism, that he will destroy the republic, and any or all of that might actually be true. But what they're doing now, and it does seem to be a line, is to point out something which seemed even more obvious about Trump and his cohort, that they are, to borrow the buzz phrase, weird. And they are objectively extremely strange people. Do you think that pointing this out now is actually going to wake people up to that fact?
It's a very good point. I've been really amazed by the degree to which that line of attack has really gotten under their skin and bothered them and scrambled them in a way that calling them, autocrats and fascists never did. They didn't feel ashamed of that, but they don't like being called weird, and they're kind of always aware of the fact that the left does have a relationship, or it makes more sense in mainstream elite kind of opinion shaping institutions, and they hate being cut out of that. And so that's where a lot of the resentment seems to come from. And so this line of attack has been working and kind of pushing them off of message. And, I was amazed to see that, in the meme wars that are going on, today there was, a lot of action on Twitter going around. George W. Bush was actually one of the first people. He was early on this. He said,
famously at the inauguration, yes.
Yeah, when he saw at the inauguration, he said that was some really weird shit. It is weird. This is the whole reality that we've been thrust into makes no sense. It's not normal, and we should actually be able to, I think, find each other and reach a consensus that this is not, nothing about this is normal or should be normalized. And I think that this vibe shift that's been happening, I've never seen, in a matter of 48 hours, an entire country just kind of, or more than half of a country, breathe a sigh of relief and kind of come together against this thing that's been happening, and they didn't have a champion to stop happening in Joe Biden. But now, Kamala Harris has kind of rallied all these people that say this is weird and I don't want this.
Well, can she win? I mean, it's a
that is the big question.
You use the tools that are at your disposal when you have to solve a task, and not the ideal tool. And I had been skeptical about her in the past, but I'm really impressed by what I'm seeing. And I think that she is the figure of the moment that's in a position to gather all of this anti-Trump sentiment that is really powerful but was kind of dispersed in the past. And so Joe Biden wasn't able to gather that energy together, and I'm really rooting for Kamala to be able to do that.
Well, on that tentatively upbeat note, Thomas Chatterton Williams and Marc Beaugé, thank you both for joining us on The Daily.
Immerse yourself in the world of Monocle by visiting monocle.com. You can listen live to our radio station, subscribe to any of our podcasts, and listen back to a wealth of great programmes. Browse over 800 free Monocle films and slideshows, or visit our online shop. Oh, and you can take out that all-important Monocle subscription and browse our exciting digital editions too. It's all right here at monocle.com. What are you waiting for?
You are listening to The Daily live from Paris with me, Andrew Muller. Now, all Olympic cities hope to draw attention to themselves beyond what prowess they demonstrate as a sports venue. Paris does not, of course, lack things to boast about, or historically the willingness to boast about them. But it will doubtless be hoped that the 2024 Games will draw even more attention than usual to one area of endeavour with which Paris is all but synonymous, i.e. fashion. Well, I'm joined now by just one of Paris's designers, Janaïna Milheiro, based almost literally around the corner from where we are now. First question, obvious question, given the amount of work we did before the show trying to get me to pronounce your name correctly, how did I just do?
Almost there.
At least on the dartboard, though?
Almost, yeah.
Okay. I'll try again when I back announce you. But on that question first, are you hoping for any sort of Olympics bounce, or are you seeing any extra interest in what you're doing because of the Games?
Not necessarily, to be honest. The work I do is mainly for companies, so luxury companies and fashion, although, yeah, we could see a lot of feathers during the opening of the Games, but no, I wasn't involved in those feathers, but yes, yeah.
Right, so you mentioned feathers, and this is your medium. This is what you work with, and how does that start? How do you end up working in feathers?
Yeah, so I was trained in textile design, so I learned to create embroideries, weavings, knittings, and at the very end of my master degree, nearby Bastille, I started working feathers, so mixing weaving, hand weavings, with feathers, so using the feathers as a yarn, and so this is how I started, and I'm still working feathers. I couldn't stop.
But have you ever kind of isolated in your head what it is that appeals to you about feathers?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes I say it's like a coup de foudre. It's just very lucky meeting I had with this material, founding this material. I think the beauty of it appeals to me, and also the magic aura you have around feathers. Yeah.
I mean, are there particular kinds of feathers that you use? Are they all drawn from one particular unlucky variety of bird?
We could say this, yes, we could say this, because they're only feathers coming from the food industry.
Okay.
So the birds are raised for alimentation, and the feathers are used, so it's a byproduct really of the food industry, like leather, we could say.
And I guess if this is going to come as, I think, a bit of a sudden concept to a lot of our listeners, the idea that there is somebody working with feathers. Is there a way a typical day begins, or how you start work on a new project?
It's not very typical. So I've been working for 14 years now. I have my workshop here in Paris. So I'm a designer. Of course, this is what I learned to do, but I also lead my little company. So, of course, I also do commercial communication. I teach, I train the people who are working with me. So, and of course, I also do creation. And what really passionates me is the technical researches, is how to connect the feathers in a new way, how to create those very new and personal techniques, because I do not have a traditional approach, but a very personal and innovative approach. Yeah.
But in terms of the technical fundamentals of it, how different is it to working with, I guess, more traditional textiles?
It's because it's not, so I'm creating textiles with feathers, but what it could be very specific to my approach is that I'm not using feathers only as an ornamental element. So I'm not only bonding the feathers or sewing the feathers. I'm really using it as a structural element. So sometimes I can make a hole inside the feathers in order to connect them like beads. Or laces. So it means I'm really able to create structures and the very own fabric only with feathers, not only applying the feathers like you could see on Aya for the opening of the Olympics. You could see the feather were bonded, but so I'm not doing this type of approach, but really creating structures with the feathers.
Would it be too much of a reach to assume that there is a certain carnival influence on what you do that you brought here from Brazil?
Yes, because I'm Brazilian born, maybe you know it, and I've never really been inspired directly from the carnival, but yes, we could say that it's probably something that fascinates me, and I never really did things for the carnival, but I would love to. I would really love to. And I did wings for the Victoria's Secret fashion show for 4 years, and it was like the top carnival we could imagine. And I really enjoy like this laboratory where we were able to create at the same time sculptures, but fashion pieces, costume. It was this in between, super creative and very also high product, like very good quality was requested.
So when people come to you, are there things they are typically looking for other than wings, obviously?
Yeah. So yes, I work for fashion and also for decoration. I also do windows display. So it can really vary. This is what I love with feathers. It's a specific material who allows me to work in very different fields. So yeah, they can search for fabrics if they're fashion designers, and I will present my creations to them and then adapt it to their needs. So they might say, "Oh, I love this creation. Please do a dress, a skirt, or whatever, a piece of garments." But they also can be searching for sculptures and installation for windows display, and also for retail decoration. So mainly sculptures, yes. We did also lamp fixtures, chandeliers. And I also work for interior decoration. I've developed several range collections of materials like laminated glass, encrusted and set with genuine feathers. So this then allows me to use feathers in many different fields, like anywhere you could use glass, you can use also those laminated glass with feathers inside.
And how technically specified is the actual work? Is it difficult, I guess I'm asking, to find people who are able to do it or who you can train to do it?
Well, I'm lucky because I'm in Paris, so there's a lot of there's a lot of people coming in Paris to study craftsmanship and fashion, and so I usually work with people coming from all those different backgrounds, but I always have to train them because I develop my own techniques. So, but yes, I can find very skilled people that I can train to my specific techniques and needs.
Well, just finally then, we will allow you an absolutely shameless plug for your work. If people have heard this and are intrigued, how can they find out more about what you do?
Yes, they can find out on my website, so Janaïna-Milheiro.com, and I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn as well.
Janaïna Milheiro, thank you very much for joining us on the Daily Live from Paris. And finally, to the reason we actually are all here, the Olympic Games themselves, and joining me once again to bring us up to date on what I am assuming is Australia's continued remorseless crushing of all opposition from the BMX freestyle at La Concorde. It's Kieran Pender, a writer covering these games. Kieran, first of all, to the big question, is Australia continuing to remorselessly crush all opposition?
They sure are. Australia has continued to have an excellent game since we last spoke, and I'm sure your listeners are enjoying two Australians talking about how great Australia is.
But we should, Kieran, address a triumph by another country, not least because it is a country which has historically had very few, indeed none of them, at least not at Olympic level. It is quite a day for Guatemala.
It's a remarkable day for Guatemala. Guatemala had never won an Olympic gold medal until today, when remarkable story. One of their female shooters in the trap shooting, she was actually a budding gymnast, suffered a spinal injury that ended her gymnastics career. She retrained as a shooter and on Wednesday afternoon brought home Guatemala's first ever gold medal. In such a long Olympic history, it's really remarkable that they'd never managed to get a gold. And so I can only imagine the scenes on the streets of Guatemala City this afternoon. They're having a very successful games. They also won a bronze medal earlier this game. So it's a heady time to be a Guatemalan sports fan.
I mean, this is, in theory at least, one of the joys of an Olympic Games, that things get done which have not been done before, that barriers get broken, which things that didn't used to seem possible now seem possible, and pivoting seamlessly on that theme. Canada and the United States both doing well in the women's rugby sevens, which sets things up nicely for the next games, which are, of course, in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's been a remarkable time for the women's rugby sevens and some unexpected result. Australia not even managing a medal due to the stellar performances of both Canada and the United States. They're only going to continue to go from strength to strength, particularly with the LA Games coming up in 4 years' time. Then also the fact that the US Rugby Federation banked a cool $4 million from a wealthy benefactor who's passionate about women's sport. In fact, an owner, co-owner and owner of a number of high-profile women football clubs, including Lyon in France. She donated $4 million, which I'm sure will go a long way to helping the United States continue their success in 4 years' time. And means teams like Australia, who were the 2016 gold medalists, the first time rugby sevens made its debut, will have to pick up their game. I must admit, and if I can peel back the curtain and journalists and reveal some of the realities of journalism at an Olympics, obviously you can't be an expert in every sport. I was covering some rugby sevens. I hadn't watched a lot of it before. I was charged with writing 600 words about a game. Halfway through, I'm like, I wonder how long this game goes for. It goes for all of 14 minutes with 7 minutes per half. Writing 600 words about 14 minutes of very frenetic action takes a little bit of skill. But to me, rugby sevens has been a highlight of these games so far.
Kieran, I'm absolutely confident that you padded your way to the word count like the professional you are. But sticking with the subject of barriers being broken, at an individual level, there's a couple of athletes here managing to combine top-level athletic prowess with motherhood.
Yeah, there's been some great stories coming out in the last few days. There's an Egyptian fencer, Nada Hafez, who has revealed that she's 7 months pregnant and competed while she's expecting. She won her first match in the individual sabre competition, then was knocked out in the last 16 and only subsequently revealed that she was competing while 7 months pregnant. Really shows that women can do anything, just as go back to Australia for a moment. Every Australian gold medal has been won at these games so far by women. So really the men letting down the team. Another amazing story is Clarisse Agbebenmenu, a French judoka, was fancied for gold, settled for bronze, but she, after winning bronze, held aloft her baby daughter, Athena, and the adoring crowd went wild, which was a very touching moment.
There's a couple of other storylines pertaining to the Olympics, if not actually the Olympic events, which we should get into. One is that it is a summer Olympics. Paris does get hot in the summer. It has been extremely hot this week in particular, and Team Monocle learnt this the hard way last night. We went to see Paraguay versus Mali in the football and sat sweltering in temperatures which I estimate at not less than 800 degrees centigrade inside that stadium. But this is becoming a thing for the athletes as well, obviously, because it turns out not everybody is air conditioned.
Yeah, so it's been very hot. I was at the BMX freestyle today, right. There's no shade. It's in Bas-de-la-Concorde, right next to the obelisk, and the sun was beating down, and myself and all the other journalists and fans were not having the best time of it, although the BMX itself was absolutely remarkable. That speaks to the fact that it is July and it is summer in France, but the French Olympic organisers decided with very noble intentions that they weren't going to put in air conditioning in the Olympic Village to make sure that this is the most climate-friendly games held yet. Instead, the Olympic Village has other forms of less taxing, less climate-intensive heating and cooling options. Unfortunately, that hasn't gone down well with some athletes, particularly given how hot it has been in the last few days, 35 degrees yesterday, because teams were given the option, if they could afford it, of bringing their own portable air conditioners, and even the organising committee did facilitate that for some as well. So we've got this sort of two-tier system in the village where if you come from a wealthy federation, the United States, Great Britain, Australia, even the French have got their own air conditioning. But if your Olympic committee is less well organised or less well funded, you've been having to sleep in sweltering conditions. Reportedly, athletes were being told to leave windows and doors open to let in ventilation, which is not exactly the sort of thing you want to be thinking about when you're about to go for gold the next day. The Parisian mayor made the point, well, we're trying to look after the environment here. So fair enough.
Well, just finally then, and it's another off-track storyline, which when I say it's developing, that is said in very much a spirit of hoping that it doesn't develop too much further. Obviously, one of the reasons everybody was looking forward to this Olympics after the Tokyo Games is that it's a return to how Olympics were supposed to be pre-pandemic. The venues are all full. People can go out and do stuff. People from all over the world can meet other people from all over the world. And yet, in a bit of a throwback to 2020/21, we are having reports of COVID outbreaks.
Yes, and particularly on the pool deck. I've been at the pool at La Défense the last few nights, and there's been real concerns about the spread of COVID within the teams competing, particularly made headlines when a British star, Adam Peaty, tested positive on Monday, less than 24 hours after he'd won silver in the 100-metre breaststroke. His profile and fame meant that news spread far and wide, and unfortunately the COVID seemed to be spreading with it. 6 or 7 swimmers from a range of nations, including an Australian, have now tested positive. It's been interesting. Some teams have been wearing masks. Most teams have indicated that they are taking precautions but not doing anything particularly stringent. And interestingly, for example, the Australian who tested positive, Lani Pallister, she withdrew from one of her events, but the stated reason was so that she could preserve energy to compete in another event in a few days' time, which is not a particularly lengthy recovery time frame. So interesting, particularly given how stringent. I was in Tokyo. We were tested for COVID every single day. We got angry text messages if we failed to register our tests. It was quite the time, whereas it's all been left now up to the athletes and federations, which they've come out mainly and said, look, we're just treating this like the flu or any other, which in one sense is fair enough. I suppose the issue of concern on the pool deck at least is where different teams are taking different approaches that could lead potentially to infectious athletes being in the mix and giving it to others.
Well, at least we can all be grateful that they didn't start the whole thing off by making everybody sail up and down a river in pouring rain. Kieran Pender, thank you very much for joining us. And that is all for this edition of the Monocle Daily. Thanks to our panellists today, Thomas Chatterton Williams and Marc Beaugé. Today's show was produced in Paris by Tom Webb, and our sound engineer was Steph Chungu, and in London, Sarah Nichols. Special thanks to Carlotta Rebello and Laura Kramer. I'm Andrew Muller here in Paris. The Daily is back at the same time tomorrow, live from Maison Allianz at the Soho Hotel. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.